Hello, Year 2. In our geography lesson today, we are going to be continuing to learn about canals. So I want you to have a think. What do you already know about canals in the UK? Why were the canals built? When were they built? How were they built? And what did the original canal boats used to carry? You might also want to think about how the canal boats used to move. So canals don't only exist in the UK, they exist in lots of places. There are some really famous canals. There are the famous canals of Amsterdam, the famous canals of Venice. There are beautiful canals in Bruges. And there are also canals in Thailand where they have a floating market. Today, we are going to be focusing on a very special canal. It is called the Panama Canal. Have you heard of the country Panama before? If you have, do you know exactly where it is? See if someone in your house would be able to point it out on the map. So we are going to go traveling around using Google Earth to find out exactly where Panama is. So we're going to start off in London. We'll zoom in a bit so we can find exactly where London is. So that dot there, where it's not so green, that is where we are. So we're going to start from home. I'm going to zoom out a bit so we can travel to Panama. Now, do you think we need to go west or east? We need to go west, across the Atlantic. So we're going to zoom across. I'm going to zoom out a little bit actually so you can see where we're going. We're going to cross the Atlantic all the way across, And there we go. That is Panama. So it is a country, a really small country, a narrow country in Central America. So that is Canada up there. This is the United States of America. That is Mexico. And then there's all these small countries here in Central America. And Panama is there. So it's quite skinny. And that fact, the fact that it's a very narrow country, is going to play a part in how and why the Panama Canal was built. Okay. So now we know where Panama is. It is, I'm going to see if I can use a little red dot to show you. There, that is where Panama is. This is the Panama flag. So why do you think the Panama Canal was built? I'm going to pause the video now and I want you to have a think. Why do you think it was built? Do you think it was built for the same reasons that the UK canals were built, or do you think it was built for different reasons?
Least. For the first time in history, also known as Forever Ever, someone created a man-made passage between the Earth's western and eastern hemispheres. They opened a literal bridge between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. It changed the way the entire world was navigated. Architects and engineers from all over the world quickly dubbed the canal one of the 7 wonders of the world. But here in the treehouse, we call it pretty much the sweetest shortcut ever. Okay, let's talk about it. More than 42,000 workers dredged, blasted, and excavated a path stretching from the city of Colon to the city of Balboa. They literally cut a beeline right through the physical country of Panama. More impressive than worth it, because before the Panama Canal existed, travel between the great oceans would entail a trip around Cape Horn of Africa, which is about 14,000 miles, also known as another month at sea. Or you could go around Argentina, wave to the penguins marching in Antarctica, but that was pretty darn dangerous and about as long. Now, thanks to the canal, it's a much shorter and safer 6,000 miles, which is not so.
The purpose of the Panama Canal is pretty easy to understand. It turns a journey of this into this. It brings the U.S. West Coast closer to Europe, and it brings the U.S. East Coast closer to Asia.
So why was the Panama Canal built? I want you to have a think again. What did those 3 videos tell us? So here we have another map, and I'm going to show you why it was built. So quite a long time ago, people wanted to travel from, let's say, Europe to the west coast of America. And what they normally did, or what they would have had to do, is go all the way down near Antarctica, like that guy said, and then loop all the way back up to America. And that would have taken a really, really, really long time. So instead, what they decided to do is they decided to dig a canal here in Panama so that they can go from Europe, go across the Atlantic Ocean, and they would sail through these islands, and they would cut through and then go all the way up. So instead of going all the way down here, they were able to cut straight across, and that saved them a lot of time. So that is why they built the Panama Canal. We are now going to talk about what are similar things and what are some different things between the between the UK and Panama canals. So what we've just spoken about is why the canals were built. So canals were built in the UK to transport things like coal and pots and pans and flour and grain from different areas of the country, and that was before railways were built. The Panama Canal was built so that they were able to just cut straight across the country to go from this part of the ocean to another ocean. So that was why they were built. These are 2 different locks. Here is a lock in the UK, and here is a lock in the Panama Canal. What do you think is the same, and what do you think is different? So how do the boats get through the locks? In the UK, in our locks, someone would get off the boat and they would have to move these big paddles, and they do that by hand. Do you think that people can move the gates in these canals? No, they can't do that. They're way too big. Also, they have tugboats that pull the boats through the canal, but those tugboats aren't needed for the narrow boats in the UK. So now we're going to watch a time lapse. And then this is one in the UK. Notice how this guy here, he has to open it by hand. Then he gets back into his boat. He goes into the lock. He's going to have to get out of the boat again to close the gate. And then what he's doing here is he's opening something else, opening something underneath the water, which lets the water out. And once the water's out, he's able to open the gate. He's going to hop back into his boat. So what do you think is the same and what do you think is different between the Panama Canal locks and the UK locks? Now, how were they built? This picture here is just an illustration of the canals in our country being built. And this is a real photograph of the Panama Canal being built. So what is the same and what is different? Now, when the canals were built here in the UK, did they have any big machinery? They didn't, because it was built, our canals were built a really long time ago, before any of these machines existed. Also, the Panama Canal didn't have the animals that would pack down all of the earth. So there was a lot more manpower to build the UK canals and more machine power to build the Panama Canal. What do the boats carry? Or what did the boats carry? Because the boats in the UK canals don't carry the same thing as they used to. So this is not a real image, but it's meant to represent something. So what is this that the narrowboat is carrying? It's coal. And here, what is this massive boat carrying? These are called shipping containers. Now, each of these little rectangles, it looks really small, but they're big enough. Some people actually live in them. They're huge. If you think about the size of these boats. So the ships that go through the Panama Canal tend to carry like goods and lots of shipping containers. How do the boats move? Or how did the boats move? So a long time ago, how did the narrowboats travel along the canals? Here's a clue here. And this is another boat, so a cruise ship that also goes along the Panama Canal. How is that one powered? Does it have a horse pulling it? Your task is to create a grid like this and to list all of the things that are the same between the canals and all of the things that are different. So you might have to watch the video again to be able to write your bullet points in each column. So I've done 2 examples. One thing that's the same is the boats are used to take things from one place to another. One thing that's different is that the boats that go through the Panama Canal are much, much bigger. Okay? So that is your task. Bye, guys.